The New York Jets are going fishing for their first win in primetime. What the Jets will have to do in Miami to get their first win of the season, and the latest updates around the New York Jets, including some big moves after some big injuries, coming up next on Rich Sports Talk. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. We have an exciting show for you today, previewing the Monday Night Football game in Miami, and a friendly reminder to those new to the channel, we will be going live after that game concludes on Monday night. So if you're a little amped up and can't get to bed right away, join us on the Rich Sports Talk show. If you can't join us live here on YouTube, you can always check us out where podcasts are available. Check us out on X using the handle @TheRichSportsTalk and more coming up. But again, it is Dolphins Jets, the first meeting of the Dolphins with Aaron Glenn. There is a lot to talk about for the game, but I feel let's start with a recap of this week. I wanted to wait until the end of the week to get a clearer picture, but of course the Jets had some big breaking news this week. With injuries piling up, the Jets made a huge trade, trading for Jarvis Brownlee Jr., the cornerback from the Tennessee Titans, who has been a starter for them and was a big player in their defense, and it seemed like Tennessee fans were surprised with this move as well. I want to give my thoughts on this trade because I think with this Jet team, there's both a micro and a macro picture. Obviously, this is the start of a rebuild with Aaron Glenn. I'll look at this from the macro next, but let's start with the micro. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a physical player. He is a guy that will get in your face, and he is a guy that can set the tone. And really, the Jets don't seem to have that guy on this defense. And I like what they brought in with him. He's a great run defender, one of the best run defending cornerbacks in the league. When asked about that, this is a quote, and I do think that this quote summarizes the guys that Aaron Glenn is looking for because he brought in a couple of other ones this week. But I thought this was very key when they were interviewing Brownlee. They asked him about his run defense and about how a lot of corners don't usually like to defend the run or try to, make those business decisions. And Brownlee said this: I take a lot of pride in that. They say there's not a lot of corners in the NFL that loves to hit or likes contact. Me, I'm a different breed. I think it all comes down to how I was raised. I played the game through pain. For me, I just love hitting. I love making the opponent feel me. I don't want to take the hit, so I'd rather be the one that delivers it. When I'm out there, I feel like me missing a tackle just put a grudge in my heart, and I feel some type of way about that. That, to me, is the type of guy Aaron Glenn wants to build around. That is the type of personality. Now, again, Brownlee has his warts, 11 defensive passes, penalties in his career in the NFL. That is something that needs to be cleaned up. But 24 years old, and this, to me, was very intriguing about how the Jets front office is handling this roster. So I'm going to piece this in different parts. And again, super chat to jump to the front of the line and get your comments in here in the section. But I wanted to take a look at this Jets draft because the Jets in this front office, I think, is a very important on how we're seeing these moves to be made. And again, we'll get to more of the injury report from today, who's likely playing. We'll talk about some of the other moves, of course, adding to the linebacking core after the linebacking injuries. But I think it was important to look at this. People are saying, why are the Jets making these trades? Juwan Briggs a couple weeks ago, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I think that these are very important because Darren Muji, to me, is looking at how to build this team. And he's looking at the 6th and 7th round picks, much like I do. For me, a 6th or 7th round pick, like we talk about lottery tickets, but a lottery ticket in the 6th and 7th round, you are basically hoping the guy makes your team and gives you 3 years as a backup player. You want him to make your roster. And I view the 6th and 7th rounds as guys who are high-end priority free agents, where they're guys that you're trying to play the game of, do we think certain guys can get to the undrafted market, or do we feel like we have to take them in round 6 or 7 so we can get them before they hit the market? So I have no problem trading a 6th-round pick for a guy that is under control. And again, only played 1 year. This is second year now. Brownlee does have a foot injury, so it might not play in Miami. We'll give you an update on that. But I really like the physicality. And let's be honest, he's a bit of an a-hole. You know what the Jets don't have? A-holes on this defense. They need some personality. Like when you look at this great defenses, Bart Scott set a personality under Rex Ryan. And I'm not saying he's going to be that, but I'm saying he brings that edge to this defense, which I think has been severely lacking. But overall, I think this has a short and long term. In the short term, I think this is a sign that the corner room isn't healthy, that this is a sign that they don't love the guys in this room and they don't love the performances. Long term, I think the Jets have kind of been telling you what they think long term. Now, again, the Brandon Stevens contract, I'm not being that dead horse, was a terrible contract, and I think they're realizing it is in real time. But I think realistically, the Jets are viewing this as next year we're going to have Sauce as our 1, AZ as our 2, and then Brownlee Jr. as our slot. He can play inside and out, but he seems to be projecting to the slot. One of the big things on this team that I think is interesting is Michael Carter. And I've said this a couple times, Michael Carter every week should be buying drinks to Brandon Stevens because Brandon Stevens has covered up that he has not had a good season. It's clear that Aaron Glenn wants a bigger, more physical corner. You look at the builds of A.Z. Thomas, you look at the builds of Jarvis Brownlee Jr. And I've said this especially with this new regime. Get ready for certain players to be moved on. Certain players you might like or certain players that we have high opinions of, because they don't fit into this new scheme. And one of the guys that's really interesting that hasn't gotten talked about is Michael Carter. Again, Michael Carter, drafted by the previous regime, got paid by the previous regime. His contract, you can get out of at the end of the season. And if he's healthy enough and a team is desperate, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a name that maybe could get moved at the trade deadline. Maybe they look at him as a safety as well, because Michael Carter did play safety in college. They have the issues with the free safety on this team. I don't think they love Cisco. And as much as we talk Brandon Stevens, the problem with Brandon Stevens is he's having trouble tackling and tracking the football, which is also difficult at the safety position. So maybe they're thinking Michael Carter to safety. There's a lot of different ways that you can look at this, but here's the way I look at this, especially for Darren Muji. I have been on the record saying I did not like his day 3 of the draft. But when talking to people around the team, and one of the key aspects, and I think it's a very important question to ask, is when a new regime comes in, when do the new scouts come in? And what I was surprised to learn over the years is many of the scouts, like Phil Savage, who was doing a lot of the pre-scouting process, he stayed through the draft process. And when you look at it that way, a lot of the scouts that were here that didn't understand necessarily what these guys are looking for, you look at day 3. Day 3 is really how good your scouting department is. And let's be honest, the previous scouting department wasn't great. And that's a big reason why this Jet team after the draft had so much turnover in the scouting department. And I get the sense that you look at the top 100 players in a draft, it's easier to get a feel for those. Day 3 is really understanding your scouts, understanding what your team is looking for, understanding the type of personality that's going to work in this program. And that is one of the reasons I think there was such a disconnect on day 3 of this first draft. And you kind of see it with a lot of these first-time drafts. The first day or first 2 days aren't bad, but a lot of them have lackluster day 3s. I think you look at Joe Shane across town, but I think he's gotten better as he's gotten more years under his belt on day 3. But I also think that the Jets are really improved their in-season scouting, because one of the things they have targeted is you looked at the Browns, you look at a team that had so much defensive tackle talent that they were going to move on Briggs, and you look at Briggs saying, this is a guy that's not only an ascending player, but this is a guy that we have under control for 3 years, and we know what he can give us. And I think this is also a smart way to attack this, where if you're the Jets and you're trying to turn this around quickly, you're going to need to hit on your earlier draft picks, but your day 6s and 7s aren't likely going to make that big of an impact. So what the Jets, I think, are doing, which I think is smart, is looking at guys that have played in the NFL. Because it's one thing to try to gauge if a guy from college can make the jump to the NFL. But it's another if you're seeing a young player who is playing in the NFL and being successful in the NFL, like, okay, we know what he can do at this level. It's not a question. And that's some of the reasons where you see some of this disconnect with young players coming into the league, because they come in, you think they can make the jump, you think they can make the transition, and some can't. Well, Brownlee has shown you what he can do and what are his issues in the NFL. Jawan Briggs has also done that. So for me, I think they're looking at saying, why would we use a 6th or 7th round pick that we're hoping can maybe be a rotational player at best when we can go and use this to get a guy with a proven track record in the National Football League? And I actually think that is a very smart way to do it. Let's get into the injury updates, which will also lead into other transactions for this week. The injury report as of today, ladies and gentlemen. Some good news. Justin Fields was a full go for the 2nd day in a row for practice, trending toward playing. Now, again, Aaron Glenn hasn't fully ruled him in, but said he would need at least a couple practices, so that is a good sign. Another good sign is Josh Reynolds was a full practice. Jay Tufeli was also a full practice. Hopefully that allows them to move some of the D tackles out to DN, which I've been preaching for God knows how long. Tony Adams was a full go with his hip today. Limited was Kenny Nwangu for this week, so he could potentially be trending toward playing. The biggest ones, obviously, are Jarvis Brownlee Jr. did not practice today, so I doubt he's going to play. And the biggest one, of course, is Jermaine Johnson, who has not practiced all week. But again, I think this staff is doing their best to not rush him back and prolong his injury. A couple key Dolphins injuries. Storm Duck and Jason Marshall Jr., their 2 corners, both did not practice, so that secondary has taken a big hit. Darren Waller was a limited practice, but more of a veteran. And Ifeite Melifanu was a full go in practice, and Jaden Wall was a full go in practice. So big injuries this week for the Jets led to some other moves. A devastating one was Quincy Williams, who's been put on IR with a shoulder injury. And then what was really surprising was McCray Ball was also later that day put on IR. So the Jets added 2 key pieces to this team. Mark Robinson, a practice squad player from the Patriots, the linebacker who Aaron Glenn said he plays our brand of football, was previous with the Steelers, has been in the league, has made some playing time with the Steelers. I thought he had a really good preseason with the Patriots. Patriots, of course, were in a weird position, was one of those elevated practice squad players who was close to the roster but couldn't play. I thought was really telling, too, before I get into the other one, was I tweeted this actually earlier in the week, and I was surprised Jamin Davis wasn't brought back to this team because I thought this was a guy who played well in the preseason, knew the playbook, but the Jets went to another decision, and they also made another practice squad addition. They signed Ben Neiman to the practice squad. Neiman is a veteran. He played 17 games for the Lions last year and has played 103 games in his career. So again, another voice from that Detroit defense coming in to the Jets building. And look, Quincy's a big loss. I know the linebackers have been struggling, but when you look at this defense now losing another key piece, this is a very top-heavy defense, and now without 2 of their best players in Jermaine and Quincy, it is not a good thing. And look, Steve Wilkes has got to show up this week. This is going to be a team. This is the matchup that I'm a little bit scared about because you have so much weaponry and speed with Miami that they can run around. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I really do, because I think both of these defenses are going to struggle immensely in this game. I just really believe that. So the big news, of course, Justin Fields trending towards starting. Again, it sounds like Aaron Glenn has said he's our starting quarterback. Ty Johnson is the backup. And with Johnson, not Ty Johnson, Tyrod Taylor. But the big thing with the Jets quarterback position is they've been holding on to the ball. They need to get the ball out quicker. But let's get to some of your comments. We'll get to the offense and defense in a little bit. Again, comments, super chat, jump to the front of the line. Let's see. Tony Alexia, hello, Rich. Giving a wave. More likes coming. Appreciate Tony, as always. Like the coaching staff, honestly. But, yeah, GM's questionable. Yeah, I think we need see another draft in free agency drones because it was not a good free agent. Sauce concussion. He wasn't on the injury list, Kuwait, so it does seem like he is trending to the right direction. Davis was originally Phil Savage signing. He should have been our GM, not Mooj. Again, I was a little surprised they let Davis go, especially underplaying him. But look, they made a decision to go with Darren Mooj, and I'll tell you, especially free agency has not been kind to Darren Mooj. And we'll talk about Mooj in a little bit because he has a key role in this week with the injuries especially. But let's go into the offensive side of the game and some of the keys here for this offense. Now, we don't know who's starting. I'm assuming it's going to be Justin Fields, who's trending toward playing. But I think that this offense and Tanner Engstrom, who I will give a little bit more leeway than Wilkes, because Wilkes is a veteran defensive coordinator. Like, he's done this before. Engstrom, I think, needs to mix up his play calling. But I also think teams have gotten wise to what the Jets want to do. We know the Jets want to run the football. I would almost come out with a play action pass or try to push the ball down the field, get the passing game going, set up a screenplay, have teams respect that you can move the football through the air, because until they give you that respect, this run game can be bottled up, especially with the run blitz, and they need to adjust the protections, because I don't know if it was the quarterback not seeing it. I don't know if it's the running backs, but they have to figure out how to deal with the blitzing, because the blitzing killed them last week. You know, teams are going to copy that until the Jets stop it. So we need to see, this is a big game for Engstrom, because we need to see if he can make the necessary adjustments here to slow down a Miami defense, which has not been good this year. They have a good front four, but they have underperformed this year. This, to me, is a good game for the Jets to get this offense going. And we'll talk about the significance on Monday night, but there's certain keys in this passing game, because I feel like if the passing game gets going, it's going to open up the running game. I want to see more versatility with how they utilize their weapons. And I've started to see a little bit of that. They're using Arian Smith as a more traditional receiver. Now with Josh Reynolds coming back, that should be a bonus, even though he's not exactly a huge upgrade. But the thing that's really been irking me is the use of the tight ends. Because you went out there this offseason, you got Stone Smart, who was a versatile pass-catching tight end, and he's barely been involved. You went out there and you made sure to make Jelani Woods a key addition to this team. And I was saying it last week on the same preview that I feel they need to use their tight ends more as receivers. And even Aaron Glenn said in the press conference they need to find a way to get Mason Taylor the football. Because to be honest, the top three pass catchers on this team, to me, who can be consistent, because I don't think Arian Smith is a super consistent player, is Mason Taylor and Breece Hall. Now, I'll get to Breece Hall in a second, but Mason Taylor is a guy that you have to create manufactured touches or some way to get him the football, because you need to have him become a threat over the middle of the field. And especially if teams are going to blitz you, the tight end becomes valuable in the middle of the field. You need to use him on crossers. You need to get him going in some space. They need to find a way to get him involved. And the biggest one to me is Breece Hall. Breece Hall, to me, and I've watched the 22 film, a lot of the Breece Hall runs is I feel like he's starting to get back into what he was a couple years ago, where I think he's trying too hard for the home run and not just hitting the hole hard and letting the play develop. There's a couple plays where the line actually had some decent holes, but he's trying to dance and find the daylight. We know what he can do in space. And I don't understand why the Jets, who once again are limited in this wide receiver room, limited in the playmaking ability, why he is not out there as a wide receiver. Because we saw Braylon Allen start to get going last week. Isaiah Davis, I think, is someone that you can plug and can add some pop to this team. But why is Breece Hall not being used as a slot receiver on this team? To me, it is a good matchup for the Jets, because he, to me, could be your number 2 pass catcher. He's a mismatch against safeties and linebackers, and you know the best things for him is when he's in space. And it also allows you, when you have him lined up as a receiver, for more diversity in the play calls. And it makes the defense think. And I've said this example a couple of times, and I don't know why we haven't seen a variation of this. And I think this is one of the frustrating things for Jet fans, is when the Jet content creators are coming up with play calls that the Jets aren't running. I've said this a broken record, but another play design I would have would be Justin Fields, Braylon Allen in the shotgun, 3rd and 3. Breece Hall lines up in the slot, motion him into the backfield, snap the ball, because off of that play, you have the option to give the ball to Breece Hall, who's in full speed, going to the corner to try to get the first down. You have the option to keep with Justin Fields in the middle. You have the option to hand it off to Braylon Allen, and that's just the running options. I didn't even mention a play action in that to throw to Garrett Wilson or a Mason Taylor crosser. Like, to me, there's so much that they can do and open up this playbook. Like this team, at minimum, over half the snaps should feature two backs on the field. Whether it's Breece Hall and Isaiah Davis or it's Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, they need to be on the field, and not traditionally, but line up Breece Hall in the slot. And if you see them put a corner on him, then it moves it down where you can be like, okay, they have a corner on him. We move him around. Okay, it's man coverage. So now we know that our tight end is lined up on a linebacker. Our tight end is lined up on a safety. Like there's so much more you can do with it. And that's what's really bothered me with Breece Hall, is because to me, coming into the season, I thought it should be 50-50. 50 of his touches come as a pass catcher, 50 come as a traditional running back. But they haven't done it yet. And to me, this is a great opportunity to do that. And you need him to open it up, take some pressure on Garrett Wilson, open up the underneath for the tight end, maybe even open up the screen game for the other running backs, because people are going to focus on where Breece Hall is lined up. That after Garrett Wilson, teams are going to look at where's Breece Hall lined up as in terms of what player can beat you on the offense. The other thing, too, with this offensive line, they need to get settled. I think Olu has been okay, but he needs to play better. I think Armand Membu has played exceptionally well. Tippmann has been up and down at certain points, but again, he's playing out of position. They need to get this offensive line going. But the biggest problem on this team to me has been the defense. And let's get to some of your questions before we get back to the defense. Tony Alexio, defense must be unpredictable, not predictable. Yeah, stop with the cover one, guys. Stop with the cover one. AG must override Wilkes and maximize weak secondary and backups effectively. Stevens and Fields are Muji bust. Wilkes is an AG bust. You know, it's too early for the firing, Tony, but I get they do need more linebackers. That's key too. But speaking of the linebackers, let's get to the defense. This defense, I'm going to be very brief on the defensive line because I said it last week and I want to see it again this week, but I didn't see it last week. I know Michael Clemens is going to get significant snaps, which drives me nuts. But can the Jets at least entertain me, especially if Jay Tufele is back? Can you entertain me because Juwan Briggs and Harrison Phillips are two very good interior defensive tackles? Can we set the edge with the Quinnen Williams on a couple snaps, have him play D-end? You see Chris Jones move along the defensive line all the time. Can we see that? Can we see them put Leonard Taylor III out on the edge? I thought he had some good snaps last week. The thing is, Tyler Barron is not a defensive end right now in the league. McGregor isn't an end. At this point, I'd give Eric Watts more of a shot off the practice squad because at least I feel with Watts, he's a bigger defensive end. Can he set the edge, which these defensive ends aren't doing? Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record because it sounds like last week. I want to see more zone defenses because, again, this man coverage isn't working until you can get the coverage right. And the big thing with Wilkes, you have to understand, they're in this weird transition phase where they're trying to get the defense that Aaron Glenn wants, but they don't have the personnel to run it. So you have to run the defense based on the personnel you have. And now with the injuries, you have to be creative. And this was part of the reason why Aaron Glenn was hired, was he's supposed to be creative with these injuries. You've lost Quincy Williams, who's a dynamic backer. This puts pressure on Jamie and Sherwood. I'll get to the secondary in a minute. But to me, one key guy in this game, and one key guy that unfortunately I think is going to get a lot of pressure on him because of his status of being a draft pick, is going to be Kiko Mauinua. If Kiko Mauinua struggles in this game, because from all indications, he's going to play a significant amount of snaps. And this is also the role that the Jets want him. He's more of a run-defending linebacker. He's going to get a lot of snaps in this game. From indications, yes, the Jets added Mark Robinson from the practice squad, but he's going to be limited on what place he's probably going to be in there on there. Yes, they added Ben Neiman to the practice squad, but he hasn't even been elevated yet to the regular roster. So Mauinua is going to get a lot of playing time. And this, to me, is a very important optic for the Jet fan. Because the way Jet fans have viewed Muji, and I've already seen in the chat, we know it wasn't a good offseason with the free agencies to this point. Day 3, is this weird cesspool of Jets fans right now where we look at day 3 of the draft. And I'll be honest, I didn't love it. I think they overdrafted Arian Smith. Malachi Moore, I thought, was a decent move. And right now he's getting key starts at safety, and this will be a big week to see him. But Maui Noah was an interesting pick at the time. I didn't think a linebacker was the biggest need on this team. But this is going to be, I think, a defining pick. Because if he's able to make a transition and make an impact in this linebacking core, I think you're going to feel better about this day 3 of the draft. Because we're waiting to see what Malachi Moore can do. Arian Smith is a project that we know is going to take a while to develop. And I do want to see him at least try a deep shot with him this week. But it feels like Tyler Barron is a wash. And that was a player that they traded up and gave up an asset from 2026 to go and get. So this, to me, is a key player in this draft because they wanted this guy. They took him in the 5th round. And this is going to be an opportunity for him because he's going to get thrown to the fire against a very athletic defense, against a very active run game in Akane. This is going to be a tall test. And you look right now, he's going to be put on an island for at least 4 weeks. Because if it takes a while for Mark Robinson to get in there, and if Mark Robinson takes out Kiko that quickly, that's also an issue because he's going to have been here for only like a week or two. And again, I understand he's a quote veteran in the league. He's been in the NFL for 3 seasons. But if he's replacing the rookie that understands the playbook and understands the defense you want to run, that is not a good optic. The other thing, too, is this defense, they have to play better in the secondary. Sauce Gardner, if you're going to be paid the highest paid corner in the league, you have to show up. And this is going to be a tall test for him. Whether it's on Waddle, whether it's on Tyreek, Sauce has not played up to his contract this year. And when you get paid, expectations change. And it's not that he's getting beat. It's that he's got picked on by Baker Mayfield last week. Now, again, I think Baker's a much better quarterback than Tua. But this is a game where Sauce is going to have a big bounce back because he is the key to this secondary. Because if he's bad, we know what Brandon Stevens is. We know Michael Carter hasn't been great. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. might not be playing. You already have a safety in your secondary. You already have a 5th-round rookie starting at safety. You need Sauce to take out their best receiver or at least one of their receivers for this defense to function. And for the love of God, Wilkes needs to adjust on defense because if Wilkes cannot get this done, Aaron Glenn needs to step in because this defense isn't just bad, it has been atrocious. And I understand for especially defenses when they're transitioning schemes and they're transitioning, it can get ugly. I still remember Robert Saleh's first year. It was a lot like this, a lot of ugly miscues, a lot of guys out of position. It takes a while to get the defense set, and now that you've lost 2 of your big pieces on this defense, it's going to be even harder. But the Jets are going to have to rely on their rookies, and Wilkes and Aaron Glenn are going to have to step up because the offense, at least on the 22 film, I'm seeing receivers get open. I'm just not seeing the quarterbacks executing. I'm seeing things where I'm like, okay, there are positives here. There's some good scheming here. There's some good play design in here. I do not see that with this defense. I see miscommunication. I see guys wide open. I see terrible coverage. I see guys way out of position. And I just see that this team, they almost are being stubborn on going out there and running this defense as if, yeah, we have the horses to run this defense. You barely have the dogs and cats to run this defense, let alone horses. You don't have a great pass rush right now. And the problem is you can't set the edge enough because Michael Clemens is terrible that you're not in 3rd and longs where your better player, Will McDonald, can get on the field. And I'm getting to the point now, too, where I know Will McDonald is a liability in the running game, but I want to see creativity with how he's utilized. Line him up as a linebacker because you need to get your most talented players on the field And with the injuries to this linebacking core, maybe put him standing up as a linebacker. Maybe have him off the edge. Maybe have him spy. He's an incredible athlete. We saw that last week with the blocked field goal. You need to find places for your best players, and you need to figure out a best way to get your best players on the field. It isn't figuring out a way to make Michael Clemens serviceable. It's finding ways to get your best players on the field and making sure that they can make an impact in this game. I have an overall theme for this game, but let's get to more of your comments again. Super chat to jump to the front of the line. But let's get to some of your comments again. How can Sauce, Carter, and Sherwood play worse? Accountability needed. Well, the problem is who's playing after them. They don't have anyone. Leonard Taylor III. I think that he needs to play defensive end. And McGregor, you're right. But you're right, Kuwait. I said McGregor was an NFL player, but you're also right. Michael Clemens is an NFL player. But at this point, I'd rather get McGregor in there, I guess, than Clemens. But Clemens is freaking horrendous. So this to me, and I went into this a bit on the post game last week. And again, for those of you new to the channel, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content. But also make sure to join us after the live stream. After every single Jets game, we come on live to dissect the game. Basically, the first 3 weeks, we've been offering therapy here on this channel, which, again, Jet fans, we all severely need after what this team has put us through. This, to me, is a very important game for this regime. And I want to talk to this regime directly. One thing that has really, I think, irked me and a lot of the fans this week is, and again, I know some fans didn't like the rah-rah on the sideline. Again, I'd rather see that from Aaron Glenn than Stonewall Robert Saleh, who's supposed to be energetic, but just stood there looking like he was lost the whole time. The same old Jets. When coaches say, we're not the same old Jets, Bart Scott had a great retort to that. They weren't the same old Jets when they were winning with him. Stop using that phrase until you prove you are not the same old Jets. Because that game on Sunday was a very Jetsian game in how it finished and how the outcome came out. This game is an important one to, I believe, the psyche of this fan base and is going to determine how a lot of this fan base is going to view the 2025 season. I know that's a lot, but we're here in week 4. If I was to have an honest conversation with Jet fans when we got the schedule and we looked at the first 4 games, if we were bluntly honest, we would have said, if the Jets are 1-3 at the quarter mark, we wouldn't love it, but that was to be expected. When you play 3 playoff teams with especially 3 veteran quarterbacks, 2 quarterbacks that are going into the Hall of Fame, 1 that is starting to build a Hall of Fame career resume in Tampa Bay, and then Miami. Be honest with me, we felt if the Jets could come out of that 1-3, we would feel pretty decent about the season. If the Jets lose this game, there is a lot to say about this. And with Aaron Glenn, this is, to me, really your first legitimate opportunity to really start to turn this around. Yes, Buffalo's out of their weight class. Baker Mayfield on the road was a tough test. Aaron Rodgers in the first game as a head coach was tough. But this is the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a quarterback that looks gun-shy, a quarterback that is making horrible decisions and turning the football over. You have a team that is so broken right now. They had to do a players' meeting after week 1, which is unheard of. This, to me, is your chance to drive the final nail in the Mike McDaniels coffin. Because if they go 0-4 the Dolphins, there's a chance he might not be the Dolphins head coach next week. Because the players have quit on him. The players don't want him to be the head coach. And all the players that have left have made it well known that they don't think he's a good head coach. You have a dysfunctional team that's even more dysfunctional than the Jets have been somehow. You have a team that is reeling right now. You want to change the narrative, the same old Jets, Aaron Glenn. You go and you win in Miami. Because checks off a lot of boxes on that list. Miami has been a house of horrors for this franchise, especially recently. You get a win there, you check that one off the box. You beat a team that you should be better than. You can check that off the box. You win on the road. You can check that off the box. But this, to me, is the most important aspect of this game and why I think it would really mean a lot to this fan base if you're able to pull it out. I had a poll for my audience last week during the live stream, and I will bring it back to you. And let me know in the comments what you have to think, because let's play a little game, Jets fans. Over the last 15 years, I want you to think of your top 3 most memorable primetime games that were a great experience. What were your 3 favorite experiences watching this team in a primetime game that brought you joy, that brought you happiness, and that brought a smile to your face? I'll wait till you have a second to think. Okay. Ready? I could only think of one. I could only think of Sam Darnold winning in primetime in his first start in Detroit. Can you guys think of another primetime? Like, I seriously rattled my brain, and I couldn't think of another fun primetime experience. But let me ask you this. If I was to say what's been the worst primetime experience of your last 15 years, 5 to 6 thoughts immediately popped in your head, and they're going to keep rolling. Whether it's the Sam Darnold seeing ghost game, whether it's the disaster game for Zach Wilson against the Jaguars, whether it's Belichick trolling this team on Monday Night Football with the punting, whether it's Trevor Siemian snapping his leg in half and the Jets have to play with the third-string quarterback, whether it's in prime time in London where Aaron Rodgers is getting the tar beaten out of him against the Vikings, the primetime game even where the Jets won with Aaron Rodgers, but he blows his Achilles 4 plays in. Primetime is a horror show for Jet fans. And we know what the routine has been. Jets get embarrassed in primetime. And then, of course, the next day, all you hear about from your friends, all you hear about in the national media is, oh, the Jets, that same old punchline. You know that all those national pundits basically have the ammunition for their Jets jokes on Tuesday. They are just ready to fire. They're already aiming to make fun of the Jets. Go in there and beat Miami. Go in there and add to their dysfunction. Go in there and win on the road and make Jet fans say, you know what, this is different. Because for the first time in a long time, we were not embarrassed in prime time. And I'm not even saying make this a close game. Go and beat this team. If you want any shot of the postseason, if you want any shot of having relative football past Thanksgiving, go and win in Miami. They are not a great team. Yes, they are a mismatch for you, especially with our defense, the way it is constructed. But go in there and make a statement. Because here's what will happen if you do and if you don't. If you do, Jet fans can be like, okay, we got rid of the House of Horrors in Miami. We got rid of the primetime blues. We actually see something that makes us proud to be Jet fans and something that we can hold on to as Jet fans. That is a building block and can give you some good attention from this fan base for the coming weeks. Because I do think this schedule eases up a bit. I think you play to teams that are more in your weight class. And if you can sneak a couple games there, heck, even go 500, if you're at a point where at week 10, week 11, there's a mathematical chance to at least make a playoff argument, you give this team some hope. Here's the opposite. If you go into Miami and you lose, do not say in your press conference about we're not the same old Jets. Because this is what would have happened. Like I've just said, you lost in Miami, which is a house of horrors. You're now 0-2 in the AFC East. And more damning, you lost to a coach where the players had basically quit on him. That team, I think, is going to quit on Mike McDaniel. And Buffalo, to me, people are saying, well, they played Buffalo close. I think that was their last gasp. I really think that was their last gasp of making this work. And I feel like a lot of those guys are looking around going, we don't see a way out. This, to me, is show that you're not dysfunctional by taking out a team that's arguably more dysfunctional, which is crazy to think about. But if you lose this game, you're 0-4. You're 0-2 in the AFC East. You couldn't win a big primetime game. The Jets lose in primetime. The Jets then are a joke on Tuesday in front of this nation. And more importantly, I feel like you would have lost the fans. Yes, they'll check in. They'll check in on our live streams after the game. But you'll lost them for this season. They'll basically be looking and saying, who are the draft picks in 2026? Who are the quarterbacks? This fan base will pivot. They'll pivot into watching college football. They will pivot into checking forward to next season. And you will put a bigger bullseye on your back for year 2 because you will immediately have to have better success. If the team at least performs and trends well the right way and they have a good record against the AFC East and they compete in the AFC East, that's one thing. But if this team is a doormat all year, if this team wins 4 or 5 games, this fan base is not going to award you patience. This fan base is not going to be patient anymore because they've been patient. They were told to be patient this year, but if it feels like you are further away than ever, this fan base is not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And it's unfortunate for Aaron Glenn, because is he the reason the Jets had this 15-year run of futility? No, but he inherited it, and unfortunately, he's going to have to deal with that, especially this team is 0-4. When you came out this offseason and you told this fan base, we're going to compete, and you told this fan base this wasn't going to be a full rebuild, even though we pretty much knew it was going to be a rebuild, you basically have lost credibility with this fan base, and they will not take you seriously until they see a legitimate turnaround. They see a legitimate team. They see a legitimate contender, because this fan base is just so burnt out. If they lose in Miami, I feel most of them will have checked out the 2025 season. They'll check in. They'll see how you do. But they'll basically look and say, they don't trust the staff, they don't trust this regime, and they're going to have a short lease for 2026. There's so much riding on this game for 0-3 teams. It is pretty amazing because on the one hand, you could see one team firing their head coach if they go to 0-4. And then on the other hand, if you see the Jets go to 0-4, I just think you will see this fan base check out. But again, we'll be here doing the live stream after Miami. Of course, we'll give you our thoughts on that game going forward. And then, again, we'll have those difficult conversations on this channel, which I love talking about the NFL draft. I don't love talking about it around, middle of October, but we will start looking at the draft prospects. We'll start talking about the trade deadline. We'll talk about the long-term pieces on this team. But some little pieces from this regime that I have liked is the moves that they're making in the trade market. I think they're looking at guys that they feel can make a quicker impact than taking risk in the draft. I feel like this team has improved with Brownlee. I'm curious to see how he's going to fit. But the big thing is this coaching staff has to be better. This team, October mock drafts are coming. This team has to be better. And my final thought is this. I think it is very simple because this, to me, is a perfect setup for Aaron Glenn. You want to change the way people perceive this team. And I admire that, Aaron Glenn. There's a lot of history with Miami, and especially games in Miami for this team in the last couple of years. Whether it's 2024, where the last 2023, where the last gasp of hopefully if they can win this game somehow, and then Aaron Rodgers can come back and save the season, and it went south. This is a fan base that looks at the Dolphins, they look at how dysfunctional they are, and they look, you got to beat that. You got to beat that team where their coaches quit on them. you have to beat that team that doesn't seem interested in playing football. And more importantly, I think Aaron Glenn knows this, but certain things have to change. The Lions are a good example. They were a constant doormat. I think they had like a losing streak forever in Green Bay. And when they finally broke it, that was one of the things that started to change it. I didn't expect the Jets to beat the Bills, but the Dolphins are a team that's in their weight class. And they're a team that if you want to make a change and really make a statement to this fan base that times are changing, you go and beat Miami. You go into a house of horrors that has tormented this team and fan base the last couple of years, and you expunge that with the win. And more importantly, you do it in the setting. It's Monday Night Football. It's prime time. This Jet fan has so much PTSD from primetime games. So many horrendous moments over the last 15 years that are scarred into our memories forever. If that happens, or a moment like that happens on this Monday night, if those moments continue to happen, if the Jets again get embarrassed, and we know the LOL Jets all day Tuesday on national media, local media, your friends, family, go and win there and win. You want to control the narrative? That's how you control the narrative, is you show that the things that always kept occurring are changing. Because so far, the Jets fan has seen this movie 3 times already this year, and they've seen it multiple times. They've seen those games the last 15 years. The big blowout that they had no shot in, close games that they almost won but couldn't finish, and then the games where you just knew they couldn't close it out. They've seen these scripts time and time again. Change the script. Change the script in Miami, Aaron Glenn. Because if you truly want to prove that you're not the same old Jets, you will do something the Jets have not done in a long time. That is win in Miami, and that is make this fan base feel good about a prime time performance in front of this entire country. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on Rich Sports Talk. If you're joining us, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. If you're joining us after the live stream, make sure to hit the follow so you don't miss our next one. And if you want to listen to the whole episode in your pocket, you can do that wherever podcasts are available. So we'll be back Monday night after the Jets and Dolphins game. I know it will be a late night, but we'll have a lot of fun. We'll talk about the game, we'll break it down, and we'll look forward to week number 5 against the Dallas Cowboys, a short turnaround at home. So we will have a lot to talk about, and especially with Miami, there's always something to talk about in those games. But again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time here on Rich Sports Talk.